Hello again, everybody. So, yeah, 2 videos in one day. I got a bunch of spicy foods in the mail, so here we are. We're going to do the Paqui One Chip challenge again. Paqui. So we'll cut away from our thumb. So, do it this way. Eat the entire chip. Wait as long as possible before drinking water. They say an hour. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try to go, I don't know, 10 minutes or so. But to keep this an interesting video, what I'm going to do is while I'm suffering through this chip, I'm going to be reading Yugoslavia's foreign policy. It's actually a series of speeches. It's a statement before the joint session of Parliament of the Federal People's Republic of Yugoslavia made March 1st, 1946 by Josip Broz Tito. I also have a small glass of water, but I mean, I'm not supposed to drink that until I've read this for 10 minutes or so. Here we go. It's a black chip. Once again, won't be touching my face. Oh shoot, it's in 2 pieces. So there it is, fresh from the package. All right, let's go. And you would have thought I learned my lesson after the last time, but I didn't. So it comes at you in waves. It's a good peppery smokiness, and then it's going to just start hurting more and more. All right. Yugoslavia's foreign policy. A statement before the joint session of the Parliament of the Federal People's Republic of Yugoslavia, made March 1st, 1946, by J.B. Tito, Marshal and Premier of Yugoslavia. The international situation, as it exists after the end of the war, for liberation is very complex. Great efforts are required of all peace-loving and democratic forces for consolidation of peace in the world. Full military victory has been achieved over Hitlerite Germany, the Axis, and its satellites. However, fascism is still alive in some countries. It enjoys full support of reactionary gentry in certain allied nations who are not satisfied with the results of the military victory and who are annoyed by the independence of small nations, the introduction of democracy, and the victory of the people over reaction in those countries. The toleration and upholding of fascism in Italy, Western Germany, Spain, and Greece, etc., represent a considerable danger for the peace which was achieved at such high cost. These facts we must face. We must do everything for peace in the world, for victory over the force of darkness, and over warmongers. I just get so choked up by Tito's words. This is equally important to our country, which was so terribly devastated during the war, particularly by the German and Italian fascists. With all this in mind, we have formulated for our foreign policy. I should like to set out briefly the aims and results so far achieved in our foreign policy, as well as the difficulties we've had to face. Our foreign policy so far has been based, and must be based in the future, on the following principles. One, to concentrate all our energies towards consolidation of peace in the world. 2, to concentrate all our energies in order that Yugoslavia may realize her rights, both those which were denied to her at the end of World War I, that is to say, unjust loss of her territories, such as Istria, Slovene Littoral, and Trieste, the Slovene part of Carinthia, etc., as well as those which come out of the last war and are based on the tremendous sacrifices and damage suffered by our country, our people. To work for the consolidation of cultural, political, and economic relations primarily with our brotherly Slav peoples, headed by the Soviet Union, but also with other countries, especially those with whom we fought together against the common enemy. Number 4, to concentrate all our efforts for the security of our country and its peaceful development, so that our peoples may not be seen as a repetition of the disaster that befell them in 1941. Peace, a deep aspiration. As a member of the United Nations, Yugoslavia is a most sincere champion of close cooperation of all democratic and peace-loving nations. By her part in the drafting of the UN Charter in San Francisco and at the General Assembly in London, she has clearly expressed this attitude. Yugoslavia is firmly resolved to conduct a peaceful policy in the future, as she has done in the past, in the spirit of UN Charter, which is based on the equality of rights and status of all its members. Such a policy on the part of Yugoslavia does not only result from her aspirations for peace, for peaceful development, for the necessary healing of our wounds inflicted in this war. This policy of peace and cooperation also corresponds to her structure, her internal organization as a federal people's republic. In a word, it results from deep aspirations of our peoples for a sound peace, which would make it possible for them to work without any obstruction for the creation of a better future. Unfortunately, I must say that the realization of some of these questions concerning our country, based on the above principles, is proceeding very slowly and is very difficult. Although the representatives of our country at the General Assembly of UN have achieved some considerable results, these results are still not in proportion to the efforts and contribution of our country in the war, and in the struggle and victory of the United Nations against the common enemy. The appointments of our representatives for various committees met with strong resistance on the part of our allies, who know very well what part Yugoslavia played in the war, what sacrifices she made, and what she suffered. Our delegation at the General Assembly, and later in the Security Council, made certain proposals. The attitude of our delegation on the question of refugees is particularly important, and on the strength of it, it was possible to make a clear distinction between real refugees on the one hand, and war criminals, quislings, and traitors on the others. At the end of the war, 2 kinds of refugees were to be found. The first had been driven from their countries by fascists, Spaniards, Jews, etc., and others had withdrawn from the Germans as their former collaborators and accomplices in various crimes. Yugoslavia had refugees of both kinds. UNRRA is repatriating those who were forcibly removed from their countries by the fascists. However, the question of traitors, collaborators, and those who fought on the German side still remains open. As regards the Yugoslav prisoners of war, it must be pointed out, of 135,000 prisoners of war, 130,000 returned to their country, and only 5,000 generals and various adventurers remained abroad. On April 8th, the Committee of Economic and Social Council will meet in London to discuss the question of refugees, and I hope this council will firmly seek a solution of this problem, which would contribute to the settlement of relations between the Allies. Moreover, our delegations has raised in the Security Council 2 important questions. The question of acceptance of Albania into the UN, which is still unsolved, but has not been struck off the agenda, and the question of movements of Polish émigré troops towards Yugoslav frontier. There was criticism by the British government that our delegation approached the Security Council directly in the matter of General Anders' forces instead of, as they say, through normal channels, that is to say, of approaching first the British government. We explained our step by the urgency of the matter. There were signs of preparations for provocations on the demarcation line in Venetia, Giulia, which would not only have made it more difficult the work of Allied Commission, then about to come to Trieste and Venetia Giulia, but also would have endangered peace in that part of Europe. As we can see from the latest events in Zone A, our assumptions and proofs were completely accurate. In view of the damage sustained by Yugoslavia during the occupation by German, Italian, Hungarian, and other troops, compensation for this damage is of tremendous importance for Yugoslavia and our reconstruction. Nobody in the world can deny that Yugoslavia suffered most in this war, that the damage is vast and almost irreplaceable. Nevertheless, despite all of this, we met with misunderstanding, even on the part of some of our allies in the matter of reparations. In November and December last year, the Conference on Reparations from Western Germany, from which Yugoslavia is to receive reparations, was held in Paris. The conference ended its work by an agreement which determined how much the country was to receive from these zones by way of reparations. Yugoslavia was to be given 6.6 of German property abroad and German goods, and 8.6 of German industrial installations in the Western Zone, as well as ocean and river shipping. At the conference, it was decided to form an Allied reparation agency in Brussels, and this was achieved in February of this year. All right, there's a lot more. Really interesting read, fairly short, only, I want to say only like 20 pages. "14 pages. I just read about the first half of it for you. I'm trying to keep this video under, 15 minutes though. So yeah, it's spicy. It's definitely already fading though. So I'm gonna say it's hot. It actually doesn't feel as bad as the last time. As you can see, I haven't even touched my water. I almost want to keep filming it just to prove that it's actually not as bad as, again, the last time I did this. The last time I did this, it kicked my butt. But yeah, Paqui One Chip Challenge.